Let's
Uh,
do this.
all right. I'm so excited. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Michelle. In behalf of Candice and Michelle Opelt, we're honored to have you guys here tonight and this evening for our monthly Zoom call. And our special guest is Michelle Bosch. So I'm going to introduce Michelle Bosch. It's my honor. Michelle Bosch is one of the world's most recognized land and multi-family investors.
Hey, that's my copywriter saying that.
But it's true though. So she is the co-founder and CFO of Orbit Investments and a full-time real estate investor since 2002. She has bought and sold over 4,000 pieces of real estate and built the third largest land investment and auction company in the US, bringing the company successfully into 8 figures revenue in a matter of 18 months. Wow, how impressive. Through the recession, she positioned Orbit Investments for rapid growth in the single family and multifamily investing space with over 40 million in assets under management. Michelle is also the co-creator of the nationally recognized Land Profit Generator program, focusing on teaching others how to invest in land, and has created over 145,000 followers via the Forevercast podcast, radio show, which is the landprofitgenerator.com, ultimateboardroom.com, and social media channels. I'm one of the followers, Michelle, for sure. Her businesses have been featured on Inc., Fox, NBC, ABC, and Forbes. And she holds an MBA Business Finance from Thunderbird Global School of International Management, the world's number one graduate school in international management. Ladies and gentlemen, I was gonna say ladies and gentlemen, ladies, it's Michelle Bosch. Oh, so excited.
Oh my God, thank you so much, Chad. Don't let that fool you. That's kind of like, I call it like my badass bio, but like I was saying earlier, it's just a simple person that came with nothing but 2 suitcases to her name to this country back in 1995, and with a heart full of dreams and zero fear of hard work, and maybe with an immigrant advantage because of that, and also as an immigrant advantage, I think us being able to see opportunities that perhaps others miss. And I say we because, the last 18 years in real estate, when we left our corporate jobs, it's both been my husband and I working together. It's all those results that Chad just mentioned are the result of a lifetime of partnership and collaboration with a phenomenal man. And yeah, we couldn't do it without it, without each other. We finish each other's sentences, have different, we have very complementary skills. And I think that's part of it. But I guess I want to start with giving you ladies a little bit of background. I came here from Honduras in 1995. Jack came here from Germany in 1997. And we came here to study, to get our MBAs. We got corporate jobs. Thankfully, we were able to find jobs that were willing to sponsor our green cards, because that's the way that we could work here legally and eventually, become U.S. citizens. And what we found out, is that a few years into it, is that we hated those jobs. We found ourselves without any freedom, without any fulfillment, maybe like many of you. And so we thought we need to start looking for something else, and we couldn't leave those corporate jobs because our green cards depended on them. So we had to, look for a side hustle that we could do in the remainder of the time that we had, which wasn't a lot. We were working 60, 80-hour weeks, and definitely our paychecks did not match our effort and our time. and hence the reason why, we started looking for something else. So we started looking into real estate, I think, as a result of an incredible pain. You know, you either move towards pleasure or move away from pain. And that pain really, you know, I'm very grateful for it, because at the end of the day, that pain is what kind of like pushed us towards putting a line in the sand and saying, okay, there's got to be a better way for us to have freedom of money, time, relationships, and purpose. And so we explored, you know, different business models and opportunities, including a bakery. And we decided, okay, none of us are early bird people. In order to bake, you have to wake up very early. That's not us. And you know, from my family back home, I had a little bit of experience in real estate. You know, my family owns commercial property back home, and you know, I understood from a very young age what passive cash flow really is. That was an investment that my father had made, you know, years prior. He was a very successful lawyer back in Honduras, but it wasn't his profession what was able to get my mother, who was just you know, a elementary teacher back home, to leave us afloat financially. It wasn't his profession. It was that investment in that commercial property. And so I remember telling, you know, my husband, Jack, why don't we start with real estate? I don't know if we can afford, you know, to start with commercial property, because to be frank, we were living the American dream. We had, you know, we were living paycheck to paycheck. We had payments on our couch, on our bed, on our car, pretty much on everything. Yeah, on our laundry machine, on our bed frame. I mean, on everything. And so, you know, we thought, okay, let me go ahead and start looking into houses and figuring out how we can flip houses. And I think that being an immigrant was a disadvantage. We didn't grow up here in this country, and therefore we had no idea and no clue on how to estimate repairs on a kitchen. I mean, drywall, both Honduras and Germany builds, you know, Germany builds for cold, harsh winters. Honduras builds for hurricanes. And so this drywall business, you know, we couldn't tell whether, you know, to, you know, put up a new door or get rid of a door was going to cost us $700 versus, I don't know, $5,000. We had no idea. And also we realized that we were a little bit over our heads in that there was a lot of moving pieces, not only on the estimation of repairs, but on dealing with a crew to do repairs, on having to look for, you know, hard money loans to, you know, to repair and so on, and dealing with realtors and open houses and so on and so forth. And so we basically chickened out when we had our first house under contract and saw all the things that we were going to have to do, and we still had jobs. We chickened out, and we kept looking, and we came across something that was incredibly new to us. And that is, we came across a concept here in the US called tax liens and tax deeds. And that basically is, if you're delinquent here in the US for property taxes, you know, you have the risk of whether, depending on the state that you're in, you have the risk of having a tax lien be, you know, recorded against your property, and eventually that property can be foreclosed, that lien can be foreclosed, or you go to a tax deed and your property is actually auctioned off at a public auction. And so that was something that was like, wow, there's no way in the world that in Honduras or in Germany, you know, you're gonna lose your property over property taxes. So we thought, let's go to one of these auctions and let's find out. So I remember there was an auction that was happening on a Monday, and, you know, I asked for Monday and Tuesday off from work, and I went up to Sonoma County, California, and attended the auction. And what I found was that it was incredibly competitive, that there were a group of guys that were probably regulars, and that, you know, probably knew the county officials really well. Needless to say, I didn't win any of the bids on the properties that I had researched. But what I noticed was that a lot of the properties, I was looking at actually houses still, but a lot of the properties that came on that auction were vacant pieces of land. And so Jack and I, you know, defeated, you know, I come back from Sonoma County and we're like, you know what? Yes, it may have not gone as we thought it was going to go. But what I notice is that, you know, a lot of the properties are land. Land is simpler. We're not going to have to deal with any of the complications that we deal with houses. And so we started, you know, exploring that, and we started thinking, okay, if these guys are letting go of their property now, 5 years later, you know, they must have made that decision in year 1 or 2. So why don't we send them direct mail? And it took us about 3 years to kind of like hone in on that method basically and create an amazing direct mail, you know, piece. And in almost 3 years, you had to scale that up. And we went from, you know, 1 property to 60 properties the next year, to 150 properties the next year, then to almost 800 properties the following year, because we started selling our land using auctions. And that's how we ended up being the 3rd, you know, largest land auction company in the US. And so we were excited, you know. 2008 came around, we continued to flip land. We buy it for 5 to 25 cents on the dollar. We're able to sell it for 40, 60, 80, up to 100% of market value. But when you're buying for so low, you know, there's room to make mistakes, and there's room for even the market to collapse on you and still make money. It's done remotely, virtually. So I am very, very, very happy that we know exactly what to do with land, especially right now in a pandemic situation. So at the cornerstone, it was land, and it was out of necessity. It was simple. It had no competition. We could wrap our minds around it. And then when we raised our heads back in 2009, Phoenix was for sale. We were sitting on a ton of liquidity. We had created about $70,000 worth of passive cash flow every single month just from notes on the land, because we sell the land in 2 ways. We sell it either by flipping it for cash or on seller financing. And so we thought, okay, Phoenix is for sale. We're able to buy houses for $50,000, you know, put in maybe $5,000, $10,000 worth of repairs and rent them for $900 to $1,000. And so we started buying up properties here in Phoenix. Then we moved on to Omaha, Nebraska, and then on to Cleveland. And basically we've used our cash, our land flipping business as a cash machine, where we've transitioned our cash profits and cash flow into houses in 2009. And then in 2015, we started thinking, well, you know, how can we start, instead of looking at 1 house or 1 door at a time, start looking at 100 doors at a time? And that's when we started, you know, getting interested, getting educated on multifamily. We bought our first property in 2016, but started basically really educating ourselves in 2015. And creating relationships with brokers, you know, becoming top of mind for brokers, and so on and so forth. And so that very first property is actually 90 units in Louisiana. Then we bought 96 units in North Carolina, and then 147 units in Oklahoma City. And so that's kind of been our strategy, is basically moving our cash from the land originally into the single family space, and then now into the apartment side. And we continue to do that basically to this day. And in order to, you know, to give you a little bit of a background as to how we accomplish, you know, our own personal goals, I was telling Chad that I'm very happy to describe to you ladies what we call the forever cash plan, because passive cash flow in the Bosch family is called actually forever cash. If you ask my daughter, she's 12 years old, and and you were to ask her, you know, what's the one cash that mama and papa are after? And she'll say forever cash. Not one-time cash, not temporary cash, but one-time cash. And if you think about it, the land notes are temporary cash flow, because when people pay off their land, you know, that cash flow, poof, disappears, yeah? And so for us, we recognize that at some point, and we're like, okay, you know, it's time to start transitioning into a much more longer-term asset that will produce that cash flow, I mean, until we decide to no longer hold that, you know, that piece of property. And so, yeah, so that's kind of like has been our strategy. And the very first milestone for us, we divided, you know, we came up with 3 milestones that we needed to hit. And the very first milestone when we started, I remember, was that we wanted to create $5,000 worth of passive cash flow. And we were able to create that with land and, oh my God, blow it out of the roof with land. Then we started transitioning, you know, how can we create that exact same passive cash flow and go from our security plan to a comfort plan where that's coming from houses, you know? And we were able to blow that out of the roof as well. And now the next milestone that we're after is like, how can we come up with our luxury plan, but that all that passive cash flow is coming from, you know, a portion of single families, but primarily larger apartment buildings. And so that has kind of been, you know, our strategy of how to, you know, go and kind of measure our progress against some sort of a benchmark. And it's been a benchmark that any of us can create. You know, for us, you know, $5,000 replaced our incomes back in the day. You know, for many of us, you know, it's a little bit more. Your security plan may be looking 3,000, maybe it's 8,000, maybe it's 10,000. You know, but for us, the security plan was, okay, how can I have a comfortable home to live in? You know, one or two nice cars. And what I mean by nice cars is like a Toyota or a Honda Civic. I can still go to Massage Envy every week, or every month, I should say every month, because it's a monthly subscription. We can still travel maybe a couple of weeks to Honduras and Germany. And so for us, that was kind of like what a security plan was all about. Then the comfort plan started and extended to a nicer house, a nicer set of vehicles, more travel, and luxury is now our luxury plan is very travel oriented, which we're incredibly bummed that we can't do right now. So Jack and I think we love traveling. Our daughter does too. A couple years ago, we even homeschooled her so that we could take half a year off, and we went, you know, and explore Asia. Went to South America. We spent, you know, 6 weeks in Europe. I mean, it was fantastic. And so, yeah, it's kind of a pain right now that we're like, oh my gosh, we're stuck at home. And it's not like we're stuck in a, you know, in a bad home. I'm actually looking at the mountains. I'm in Central Phoenix and PV. Our house sits in an acre, you know, over 7,000 square feet. So it's not like we're slumming it, you know, but it's nice to be able to travel. We wish we would be able to do that. But in any case, we're all healthy. And more than anything, I wake up every morning, ladies, I tell Jack, with an immense gratitude. Like if mindset just a few months ago was something nice to talk about, it's a necessity. And I think mindset, we can all really start working on a mindset by anchoring into gratitude. I'm so grateful that we can continue moving forward with our businesses, especially on the land flipping side, you know, that we have the collection rates that we have on the multifamily, you know, on the multifamily side. And that we're very well adequately capitalized. You know, we're continuing add to our liquidity so that when the opportunities arise, in maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months from now, we're going to start seeing some operators that, you know, either bought too high, too expensive, or that had crazy assumptions on rent increases and so on, start hurting, and some opportunities will come up at that point. So just pivoting for that. Since 2008, we've also started teaching the land flipping with others. That's how Chad got stuck in Zoom for a couple of days. And yeah, also positioning that, you know, that other business also to thrive right now in this market, and virtualizing a lot of, you know, our offerings, which were actually in the form of live events, very similar to what, you know, Rod does in, you know, with his multifamily boot camps. And his multifamily boardroom mastermind, which we've been a part of since inception. We're one of his founding members, Jack and I, and just also bummed by not being able to just hug people there and not see each other in person, you know. So yeah, that has kind of been my story. And then I can tell you a little bit more about, you know, what I'm doing on the multifamily side in terms of well, you guys know my collection, right? So just to give you a little breakdown, Louisiana. So that's a 90% collection for April. It's a C property in a B minus neighborhood. And we're actually getting close to, marketing it for sale. It's still going to be put, for sale, because we're almost in a full cycle of having bought that property, optimized it, and now sell. If we need to hold on longer, we'll just have to do that. Thank goodness we don't have a 5-year loan, but a 10-year, so we don't have the stress of having to refi if capital markets come to a standstill and there's no opportunity to refi. Even though right now, interest rates have dropped. So in one of our other properties, we're actually looking into refinancing for a lower interest rate. And actually, Anton Matley, I saw somebody here by the name of Matley, Sandra Matley. I don't know if they're related, but we've been working closely with Anton on.
Sandra is the wife of Anton.
Oh, Sandra, so nice to meet you, Sandra. So we've been working with Anton on refinancing our North Carolina property, which is also, almost fully optimized as well. And that one is almost to close 100% collection. It's the tenant base, very well insulated from them not necessarily being able to pay their May rent, only because, again, about 70% of the tenant base is military personnel or retired military. Something other that the moment that we take over properties that we've started doing is increasing our criteria of income for rent. So 3 times income, basically, because it's one of the properties, especially the one in Oklahoma, that was like at 1.52, and therefore our tenant base, wasn't where we needed. Actually, that's the property right now where we're still working on really getting that tenant base to improve, because we just started maybe 6 or 7 months ago with that higher income threshold, basically for the people that applied. So let me not jump around here. On the North Carolina one, close to 100% collection, like I said, I have there that we've owned 2 years. I have 2 that are scheduled to move out there, 2 that are on a promise to pay so far. So I'm expecting May for those 2 to maybe become 4 or 5, and so on. Oklahoma City, that's the one closer to Tinker Air Force Base. This one, we are at 91% collection, which is normal for this property. This is a C property in a C plus neighborhood. And like I said, this is where the tenant base, we were only right now in the process of really improving that and increasing that tenant base. I have there 13 people that have not paid. We've owned that 16 months. 5 have promised to pay. 4 are normal move-outs, and 4 were evictions before the pandemic hit, where we had already filed, but because the court is closed, we have not been able to evict those people. So that's kind of where I'm at on those. But yeah, so any questions that I can answer, anything that spurred a little bit of interest on anything that I've said, I'm an open book.
All right. So Michelle, thank you so very much for sharing your story and your success and your journey. My question to you would be if you could elaborate more, because during these times, a lot of people, it's times of uncertainty. It's great that you have, it sounds like you have a good number of collection in your apartments, but is there any other strategy? Is there any other thing that you do to make sure that the collections will be better starting in May or the next few months or something? Are you doing something special?
So one thing that we're doing, and we're testing actually in Oklahoma City, which is the one that we're still, not quite there in optimizing the tenant base, which when the property management, the regional director there brought it up, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I totally agree with that. But their late notices are being, placed in red along with a little red balloon in front of their door, which when I first, when she first brought it up as a suggestion, I'm like, oh my God, that is like so shaming that tenant. You know what I mean? But I'm willing to try it. So we're trying it right now in May in that property, and we will see. You know, if because people will know that means, you know, if you got a little red note and a little red balloon, and you see other red balloons, you know. You know that those people haven't paid rent also, you know? So that's one thing that we've been doing, but I think it's generally just constant communication. You know, in all three properties, the leasing agents there on the ground are asking for constant communication. Like if you have any problems, you know, with paying rent, come talk to us. Don't hide from us, you know, don't evade us. We'll work with you. And we're willing to take partial payments, you know what I mean? If they've been hit by COVID-19, that the worst thing that you can do is, like, if a person is sick, to try to evict them, you know, which we can't anyways, you know. But so yeah, those are some of the things that, you know, we've been doing. And then that one property, we're trying that. We haven't tried it on the others, and I don't see the need for it yet, but I may be of a different opinion in 30 days. So yeah, but I think mainly, I think what saved us is having been proactive before this all happened, and increasing, you know, our criteria of income to rent requirements for our tenants. And that gives us just a better quality tenant. Another thing that we do when we also, you know, acquire a property is we really study our rent roll. There's like a credit score that the property management has for every person that, you know, that applies, that it's not just what the credit score that you have from a credit agency bureau, but some kind of internal scoring system that, you know, the property management, which is Wayner in Oklahoma City. We have Apartment Dynamics on North Carolina, but they each have like a score. And we try and strive to be on the highest, on the upper end of that score, basically, versus in the middle. Because what we notice is, during the first 3 months of having had these properties, is that people that were in the low end of that score, we had delinquency problems with them, not being able to make their, you know, their payments. And so we went and actually went through every single lease jacket and identify where was this person employed and how susceptible they were, basically, to an economic downturn, and so on and so forth. And that's how we came with, okay, you know, there's a good percentage of the tenant base that, you know, is solid, that comes from military, but there's this other where we're very vulnerable, you know, to their jobs disappearing, you know. And so that's when we thought, okay, we need to increase that, you know, that criteria of income to rent, in order to improve that, and making sure that they're on that higher end of that spectrum of that credit scoring system that each of those two property management companies has, which is very similar, very comparable. So, but that's already something that we did before this happened. Once you're in it, you know, I don't know what much more you can do than being in constant communication, making sure that they know that you communicate to them all the assistance programs that are out there available for them, you know, in order to pay rent. And I think is also a matter of showing them a little bit of firmness, yes, humanity, but firmness in what your expectations are of rent. I mean, at this point, this is the, you know, the only thing you can do, because you can't, even if you wanted to kick them out, you can't.
I have a quick question, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 3 multifamily properties, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
then 50 single family homes.
Okay.
We have like 15 here in Phoenix, a whole bunch in Cleveland, and other whole bunch in Omaha.
And on the multifamily, do you have 3 different property management companies?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's that like when you're working with all different property management companies?
Well, I can see when one of them is not having the best practices than the other has. I'm able to say, hey, you know, in this other property, we're able to do this, especially on how they're reporting, you know, accruals versus cash accounting and so on, just for us to have a better grasp, you know, if one of them has been doing a better job at that, you know, I'm able to immediately compare and contrast basically who's doing a better job with what, and bring in a little bit of the best practices from Louisiana, which is called, actually it's AFI, Alexander Forest Investments, and from Apartment Dynamics. And if, you know, and if my Oklahoma City Wayner is not doing an amazing job on certain things, I can say, this is what we're doing over there. We would like to also, you know, have those best practices happen, you know, in this property as well. So that's the good thing about, you know, having three. What it comes down to though, is that usually our Monday mornings, we're basically, we get off one call with one, you know, with one property management company, and we get on the other one. So our Monday mornings is usually, you know, taken, you know, for that. And versus having basically one call where you could probably talk about all three assets, you know, and it's three different people, three different personalities, you know, that we're dealing with, and so on and so forth. But I find that it has given us an opportunity to basically bring some best practices from one property to the other. So I see it as a positive. We have not necessarily, you know, specialized, like there's certain people that only specialize in Texas and therefore have, you know, all their Texas properties be handled by one property management company. I mean, there are some good things about that as well. You know, we've just been looking for properties where we have a big anchor of employment, such as a Tinker Air Force Base or a Fort Bragg. And that's part of the criteria for selection, you know, for selecting our markets. It hasn't just been population growth or whether it's a hot and sexy market, but whether it's been actually boring, predictable, and has some sort of an anchored of, or what we call an economic cone of prosperity, that could be either an Amazon warehouse, or like I said, a military of some sort, or a big government agency, or an educational company like a big university, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. So whenever we look at markets, we're like, okay, do we have a big economic cone of prosperity that is coming from one, you know, employer that could give us a little bit of stability, and still have a little bit of, you know, diversity in that workforce, you know, as well, in an employment basis. Because I think it's bad if it's just one big dominant employer, and if that employer goes bad, you know, you're dead in the water. So yeah.
Okay. I have one other question that I thought of as you were talking. On the ones that you mentioned, the evictions, like you have the 4 evictions that you can't go through with right now. For those of us who have been passive investors only to this point, mm-hmm. what are the reasons that you would evict? Is it just non-payment?
Yeah, delinquency. Yeah, okay. Non-payment, delinquency, and basically maybe their, you know, their lease coming up, and they've been behind, and they've constantly, you know, making 3 payments to come up with one, you know, with the 1 payment for the entire month, or not meeting, or their lease coming up and them not meeting that 3 times income threshold. So yeah,
okay.
that's part of it. Yeah, that mainly it's non-payment. We in neither of these properties have we ever had any issues where, you know, there's drug related problems or crazy stuff like that. This is just hardworking. In a lot of cases, especially like, for example, my Louisiana part, a lot of hardworking Latinos, you know, that are just, you know, coming like I came, looking for a better, you know, a better life for themselves and for their children and the next generation, and so on and so forth. So no drug problems in any where I would say I would need to evict because of that, because of issues that have to do with that. So it's mainly non-payment delinquency.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. I just keep thinking of things. Is it just you and your husband on your multifamily properties as the sponsors, or are y'all doing syndications, or do you have?
We do syndications. In our very first property in Louisiana, we're basically 3 sponsors. the gentleman that we learned multifamily from, you know, we partnered with him. We came up with he's like, well, if you guys want to learn from, you know, from me, I'll bring the deal. You guys, you know, bring in the cash deposit, you know, to control the property and help us fundraise, which for us was incredibly simple. We were scared to death when we thought, oh my gosh, I've never asked anyone for money. But because we have an educational company, you know, an educational business where I've been able to teach people how to flip land and create cash flow and cash profits. And we've nurtured those relationships now over a period of almost 10 years, you know, or back then it was less than that, 6 years, 5 years. But I've taught them how to make money, and they're, you know, they know us very well now, trust us, connect with us. And it took us one webinar, you know, to put, you know, to come up with almost $1.2 million in funds for that very first syndication. So we went from being scared to like, oh my God, feeling bulletproof. We can do this. So, but we had never, you know, really asked for money in that way. You know, I've asked for money when I'm selling a piece of land, you know, or selling, you know, one of our courses or something like that, but not really for them to invest with us. That was our very first time. And it really opened up, you know, our world to like, wow, you know, we've been sitting on this amazing list of, or network of people that we have not been able to tap into and bring along with us to grow with us, not just in the land flipping side, but continue growing with us on the apartment side on a much more long-term horizon, you know what I mean? Which again, for us has been amazing because, you know, that land flipping business has again allowed us to now live our purpose in helping investors, you know, that are more advanced and that are wanting to invest their income passively like you, or be, you know, heroes to really a beginning investor that has no idea about real estate and wants to replace their, you know, their job by teaching them how to flip land. So in either way, in either, excuse me, in either asset class, we've been able to be transformational, just not just transactional, and bring them along with us in our own growth as well. And my vision is that, you know, every single person that invests with us in the apartment buildings, that at some point, my daughter Sophia will be doing business with her kids, you know? That's how long-term we think about things. I'm not about just the short-term gain. And so yeah, that's basically it.
Ladies, any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Kind of a two-part question. So first of all, we all know how important reserves are, especially now. So Michelle, I was curious how much in reserves you keep for each property. And then my second part to that question is, I know the Louisiana asset's full cycle at this point, but with the other two assets, do you have any major CapEx projects ongoing or renovations? No. And has that plan changed at all?
This is a very good question. So no, the moment that this hit back in March 15th, that was my very first call to each of the three of them is like, we're halting all CapEx, all major CapEx expenses, except for regular maintenance, you know? And if it's maintenance that is not absolutely necessary, you know, because we were thinking, oh my God, you know, millions of people are going to get the virus and we don't want to be bringing the virus from unit to unit to unit to unit. You know, if it's not critical, we're not going to repair it. But the major CapEx, yeah, we halted that. We immediately also put up an email to each of the investors list for each of the three different, you know, properties, letting them know that we were at X amount of collection. For example, you know, as of April 5th, we were at X amount of collections, and that, you know, we, out of an abundance, you know, of caution, we were canceling the Q1 investor payments. And everyone has been incredibly reasonable. They, you know, we've been in contact with them, I would say, every other week by sending an email with updates on how we're doing in collections, and people have really welcomed that constant communication. They really appreciate it, and so yeah, so that's one thing. Then to answer your first question, actually, we usually like having anywhere between, I would say, 8 to 12 months of reserves, you know, for each of those properties. I know that it may sound like a lot, but I'm an extremely conservative person, and maybe it's because because we're women and we're much more cautious and much more we're wired for safety, for predictability, you know what I mean? I rather overfund a little bit to have cushion than not and maybe, yes, I'm going to make a little bit less at the end, but therefore we have this cushion that, you know, could help us and protect us. So yeah. And right now we continue flipping land, actually, to continue adding to that liquidity, you know what I mean? Because the opportunities will come up. And I think our investors right now, we are in communication with them, because our goal will be that whenever the properties and the opportunities that, you know, come up in the next 3 to 6 months are there, that they are feeling comfortable enough with us to continue, you know, investing with us in the next ride, and so on and so forth. So so it's been two parts of that conversation with the investors. Has been, okay, this is what we're doing right now, you know, and this is how we're protecting ourselves, and this is and part of it is not making, you know, payments and no capex, and this is how collections are going. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect of that is already kind of like planting seeds of the opportunities that will be coming in the future, so that they can remain open to that possibility. So it's kind of been, our communication has been a two-pronged approach, you know, to that, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Great answer.
Another thing is that when we take over properties, we also, you know, try to test, you know, or stress test, you know, with different levels of delinquency or vacancy, you know, and across the board, you know, for us, we like, can we still, you know, make our mortgage payment and continue operating if we are at 70% delinquency rate, if we're still at 65%, you know what I mean? And so that's something that also allows us right now in this circumstance to really sleep well. Because if you don't stress test, you know, in these lower levels, those lower levels can very, very quickly, you know, if we don't open up the country, turn into very much a reality. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Anyone else, ladies?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm really new for this new multi-family investment, but you mentioned about the 3 times the income threshold. So if you have someone, a tenant, who is just 1.5, 2 times the rent, would you not renew their lease the next year when it's over because they don't meet that criteria? Or it's like,
you know what, if they're at 2 times but they're always on time making their payments, mm-hmm. I think I would definitely rent to them. But if they've struggled and they don't meet it, I mean, no.
Okay, yeah, so you would like not renew the lease just because they are not in the threshold, unless there is use.
Yeah, if they've been making their payments and if they take pride and ownership in that unit, if we go into that unit and it looks spick and span, you know what I mean? If they're taking mm-hmm. care of it, I don't see a reason for not, you know, for not allowing them to renew. They need to be willing to also renew at the higher, you know, rent amount. Mm-hmm. And if they're okay with that, I don't see any problems with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Michelle. This is Renee. And when you go buy a multifamily, do you?
Oh, there you go.
Hi. So when you purchase, are you looking mainly at a Class C property where then you're going in and you're doing value add? Is that?
Yeah, that originally in our very first property, it has been, you know, actually that first one is kind of like a B minus. The one that is a C is right now the Oklahoma City one. Also the one in North Carolina is more of a B in a B neighborhood too. So, I mean, lately, especially after thinking that it was gonna be quicker and easier to, to change the tenant base of the Oklahoma City property. Now I'm like, okay, I don't want to touch any more C's. I only want to do B's from now on B neighborhoods for sure. Been there, done that. Let's not work that hard for our money. So that will be our focus. When opportunities come up right now in the future, it'll definitely be B properties and B neighborhoods.
So,
and our goal is to be, at the end of the day, is to have a clean property, a first-in-class, create a first-in-class type of community where people want to be there, where single moms would want to be there. One of the very first thing in all 3 properties that we did is that, we completely revamped all the lighting, in all the common areas so that everyone feels safe. We have on all 3, we have a little mini library. We've now started tutoring for the kids after school. So we want people to want to live there, I want them to feel like it's their home. All 3 now have fitness play, a fitness room. All 3 have pools, of course. Pergolas, barbecues, common area amenities, a playground for the children in all 3, things like that. Yeah. So it's been mainly value add. Although, if there's an opportunity to buy a stabilized asset, where there's not a whole lot, to do to it, I'd be willing to do it. Probably not with, other people's money, but my own money, just as a long-term hold, like forever and ever. So at that point, I would be much more of a yield investor,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about the tutoring that you mentioned, Michelle.
Yeah.
Who does the tutoring and how do you find those people?
From the same community, from the same community, we have found, in one of them, in 2 of them, I think they're college students that are wanting to, help us out, and they basically charge us like an hourly rate, 3 times a week for 2 hours for kids to come. And in the other one, I think it's one of the moms there in the community that is basically doing it, and we're paying her, very similarly as well. So sourcing them from the same community, for sure.
And are y'all having activities? Do you have events and things at the communities yet?
We do. We try to, have like a, whenever, what was it right now? The bunny, the Easter rabbit bunny. And, even though this year we were not able to really have the Easter egg hunt and so on and so forth, but really, have a little something, a little chocolate bag for each of, the families that we know have children, for Easter. And so yeah, but under normal conditions, there would have been an Easter egg hunt. There would have been at least in North Carolina, I know we've done it, and in Louisiana, a Santa that comes, also that you hire for like a couple hours to come and take pictures and so on and so forth, stuff like that. We have a back to school also event where we provide supplies actually for the children there in the community. And it's like a big barbecue, and they can come and get school supplies and so on and so forth. Hopefully we will be back to school in August. I sure hope so. And things like that. Yeah. But not necessarily like bingo nights or because I know like on the A, B, or even B plus or A, more luxury type of properties, they can go all out with these kinds of like, community events and so on and so forth. So ours are definitely much more modest for sure. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Vanetta. I just
Hey, Vanetta.
joined. Sorry I'm late. This is all very new to me. So one of the things that I wanted to find out in terms of do you do like currently full market rent in terms of renting the property, or do you have like tax credit as well? And if you do not, have you considered doing tax credit, or is it better to just do full market rate rent to the resident?
Yeah, we do full market rent on across all three properties. It's yeah.
Is there a pro and con to doing it or not doing it, or it doesn't matter?
I just don't have, yeah, we want to stay competitive, you know, in each of those markets. We just have no experience with anything else but that, basically charging what market rents go for. Because we take great pride in, you know, taking care of a lot of the deferred maintenance that those properties have gone through and really make them look beautiful. I don't see why to undercut your price. I mean, if you start competing on price, that can become a slippery slope. And then you end up with tenants that you really don't, the kind of tenant that you really don't want. So that's we try to stay competitive. And if anything, you know, there'll be like maybe like a special for, you know, a special $100 off rent or something, or a special, you know, where we cut down on the deposit that they need to pay, for which only 2 of those properties we basically have deposits. The other ones, they're kind of like application fees of sort, and they're not refundable. They're not refundable deposits. So we can give them a break on those 2 things. But I don't like a whole lot of concessions.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question would be, and thank you for answering that. My next question would be in terms of starting out, like I said, I'm brand new. So starting out with a multi-unit or a multiplex, like what's should I start out with something like 4 plus, or?
Definitely. You want to start, hey, when I started, I couldn't even start with a multifamily. I couldn't even start with a single family. Like I was telling the ladies, we had to go to the very beginnings, the lower end of the asset classes, you know, with the foundation of it all. I had to start flipping land first and, you know, gain mastery from the repetition of over 4,000 flips. And once we had mastery in that, and we understood, and we had been in this country long enough to understand, you know, how to estimate repairs on a single family home, we went into single families. And then from there, you know, I had a learning curve of really optimizing and really learning through mastery, through repetition, basically, how to manage a, you know, a remote portfolio of single families. From there, we started looking into larger multifamily. And yeah, it was a bigger jump, but it took me from 2009 all the way to 2015 to me even consider, you know, multifamily. I think it has to be something where you can wrap your mind around. What I am going to say is that multifamily, you want to be very, very well educated. You know, I believe in paying for education, because you either pay with education or you're going to pay with very expensive mistakes. So I'm a big believer of collapsing time. That's why in that very first deal, you know, that we syndicated, it's 3 sponsors. It's my husband, you know, myself, and our partner, Corey. So because we wanted to learn from him and really understand what it was to, you know, bring a property full cycle. And when we were already out of the weeds with that property in Louisiana, we thought, okay, now we understand what to do. Now we can go do this ourselves. And then it's just Jack and I, the sponsors of the other 2 properties. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you definitely want to, the moment that you start taking other people's money, you want to be incredibly careful. I mean, I've worked too hard, too long to lose my money or anyone else's money. And so, so I would say get educated. You know, if there is someone that you can partner with that has experience, you can go about it that way. If you find somebody that you trust, connect with, and respect, that you can pay, you know, to coach you through it, do it. And that you know that it's going to bring you to the results because they're living the results that that they're teaching you, and that they eat their own cooking. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're not just teaching you, but they're not doing this actively. I'd be
Right.
scared of people like that. So that would be my advice as a beginner. And if the thing with 4 units, the only thing that I'm going to say about 4 units is that you're going to have to run those like you manage a single family, you know, when you have 4. And that's why we went from single family straight to the large multifamily. It took us a few years, but what large multifamily of 90 plus units allows you to do is it allows you to have, you know, full-time leasing staff, full-time maintenance person, a full-time person that is only turning over units. It allows you to have a property management company that kind of insulates you from the toilet is, you know, broken call, you know, on a Sunday afternoon when you're chilling at the pool with your family. And so that's the beauty of the larger ones, is that they're spitting enough cash and enough income to allow for the salaries of those, you know, those 4 peoples in between you and the tenant. But the reality is that not everyone can start there. So just know that if you go for, you know, 4 units, that it's going to be, that you're going to be having to run it much more like a single family home. You're not going to have a lot of the economies of scale in terms of keeping your expenses down like you have in a larger property, you know?
Yeah.
But it's still the beginning of a big dream, and just, you know, take it step at a time. Don't let any of what I just said right now scare you. On the contrary, educate yourself, you know, and whenever you feel fear, lean into it. I have always found that whenever I lean into it, you know, I go through it, and then all of a sudden, you know, literally seconds later after making a decision that was scary, it isn't so scary anymore. You just have to make it. So don't let any of, you know, what I just said, you know, that you're going to have a little bit of more expense and a little bit of having to deal with tenants and so on and so forth. Because if that's what it takes, you know, to get rid of a job that you hate right now, why not? If this is your ticket to freedom and, you know, of money and time and fulfillment, why not? Go for it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Vanessa.
Anybody else, ladies?
So serious. Come on, ladies. Tell me what's going on.
So
Wait, just pretend like we're chatting. It's just that I didn't bring my drink. Lisa beat me to it.
It's nighttime. I thought we were supposed to.
I did
I'll
have
jump
one
in. This is Tamara from Michigan.
Hi, Tamara. Nice to meet you.
Hi there. I just want to thank you for being so like open and like just so generous with your just telling the story and just everything. It's very nice. It's like a breath of fresh air.
My pleasure. It is my pleasure. The same here. You know,
Simon,
like I said, I could do this like all day long.
Yeah, I can tell you actually you like to tell the story and you have a passion for it. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think, oh my gosh, probably up until I die, I'll be doing real estate. So it's a topic that I love. It's a vehicle that allows me to, you know, be transformational to others. Whether it's them looking for a home, looking for a piece of land to retire in the future, a builder that is envisioning, you know, a beautiful, you know, 1,500 square foot home, an infill lot in a city or in the path of growth, or an investor that is wanting to come along, you know, the ride with us, and that we can be transformational, you know, I mean, this is, you know, when in multifamily, it's like hard earned money from people that you're taking. And so you want to be
totally,
incredibly respectful and definitely long-term oriented, and be willing to make short-term sacrifices, you know, for that long-term relationship for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out more about the land flipping. Is there a way I can contact you later?
Yeah, absolutely. You
Okay.
can send me a DM. I'm on Facebook.
Just to let you know, Renee, I just finished my program with of training with them in their company. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been teaching now for almost 10 years. It's a team of almost 30 people. I just actually onboarded this week 5 more coaches to come and help us, and we are very proud of the work that we do there. We have this Facebook community called the Land Profit Generator Group. Because our method, we call it, we branded the Land Profit Generator method. And it's a community of over 9,000 flippers, incredibly generous with their time and money. We've been grooming this group for the last, 5 years. My husband and I are personally every day in that group, giving. And what that has translated into is that everyone else that is 2 steps ahead of the person that is 2 steps behind is willing also to give back, to be generous, just like somebody, was generous with them.
Yeah.
They're paying it forward. And sometimes, our coaches and us, by the time we get into the group, most of the questions have been answered by everyone else.
Yes.
So, but we try to be there every single day. We have a live teaching every Wednesday inside of that group. Yeah, we actually have a lab. Chad just participated in one a few weeks back. We have one coming up on May 11th. And it's a free, yeah, it's like a free week-long training. And the whole point of that is that, nobody needs another course. The whole point is to every single day teach you something and you go take action. Teach you something and you go take action. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. So it's kind of like bringing you through the beginning portions of how to find, your sellers, how to get your lists, how to organize your list, how to select those areas, with 3 types of properties in mind, which are the ones that we mainly specialize. We specialize on infill lots. We specialize on path of growth land, and we specialize on rural property that is up to 2 hours away from a major city and that has some sort of amenity, a lake, hunting, hiking, something beautiful that you want to drive for 2 hours, And so we have that May 11th. And if you go inside of the group, you'll probably see their announcements, or you can register. It's called lpglab.com. And it's going to be us live. It's my husband and I. We go live at 10 a.m. and at 2 p.m. And between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., we leave you homework. And you go do it. And then the next day, we go live again and we leave you homework and you do it, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay.
So
thank you.
You're very welcome.
So how much cash do I need then? Am I going to go buy a property? How much cash do I need to have?
So we specialize, Renee, we specialize in properties anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000 in value. We have found that spot is very easy for us to find buyers, in all those 3 types of properties, where we can basically wholesale for maybe 60% of market value. And if we're buying it for 5 to 25 cents on the dollar and you sell it for 60 cents on the dollar, you'll be able to get rid of it quickly and still make money. So we usually, what we do is we either buy those properties and put them on the contract and then do what we call double close. So basically you put it under contract, you go find your buyer, and then the buyer's money pays the seller.
Oh, so I don't need any money then? Because
you will need money to market, to basically send direct marketing.
Oh, okay.
Send direct mail. Mm-hmm. So there will be a little bit of, upfront cost on that end. Okay. But so you can either use double escrow. There's a couple of states where double escrow is not necessarily, I don't think you can do it. So in those 2 states, we have still people that work and operate in those states, but they use options. Basically, you put an option on the property for a specific, price that you're going to buy it at. You go and find a buyer for ideally a price that is higher. You exercise your option. You sign a sale agreement. You send that to the title company, and again, your buyer can bring the funds. You can use transactional funding.
There's ways around it.
So,
Yeah, there's so many ways around it. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
for sure.
I have a question. This is Annabelle.
Hey, Annabelle.
Hi, great presentation, by the way, and I love your energy. So,
You're very welcome.
how long does it take to sell these lands? So, like, if I were to buy one and I want to flip it, how long does it take to actually sell a piece of land?
Anywhere I would say from, I've had pieces of land that we put up a listing and within days it's gone, to maybe a higher price property that I'm willing to really capture much more of the value. That takes me maybe 3 to 6 months, because I'm not willing to sell it at 60%, but I'm wanting to sell it at full retail. And I want, just to give you a typical example of what I'm talking about, say I have a property that I bought, I don't know, for $5,000, and its assessed and its market value is $50,000, and that's what I'm trying to capitalize on, the $50,000. You know, it may take me a little longer to find someone that can give me $5,000 or $10,000 down, and in that case, all my initial upfront cost, I've recouped it, and then they can do monthly payments of $300, $400, $500 for the next 5-10 years. So if I want to, in the higher that price point, you know, $100,000, $150,000, it may take a little longer, unless it's a builder, which we have, you know, we specialize now. I mean, after doing this for 18 years, we have certain kind of like sweet areas that we like to harvest, you know what I mean? Where I know that, you know, builders are interested in those properties, and I can get them really cheap, and, you know, we can have a wonderful collaboration. Yeah.
Very nice.
So it can be quickly. Sometimes, you know, for example, there's a county in Florida where, you know, somebody told somebody that, okay, these guys, you know, can find you land for, you know, for X amount. And so we had that builder actually contact us. We were not working that county, but we're like, okay, let's try it. So I usually, what I normally do is I find my areas first, and then I find my buyers. But sometimes you'll find a buyer and then you go find them the land in the areas that they want. So that's another way to go about it. But the more scalable method is for you to select areas. You know, we go and say, okay, what are the 15 largest growing cities? And perhaps I don't take LA or New York or one of those, you know, where, or land such as, like, I don't know, Napa Valleys, because that was the thing in Sonoma County when I went up there. It's all wine country. Who the heck is going to let go of their property, you know what I mean, for 5 to 25 cents on the dollar?
Yeah,
and, you know, so you want to stay away from that kind of area. But for example, an area like Phoenix is game, you know, Dallas is game. There's, you know, these northern counties in Florida, all this southern belt, basically from the middle of the United States south, where you are able to market properties year round. Those are game for us, because who the heck wants to buy a piece of land under however many feet of snow? So that's why we personally don't like touching any of the northern. Actually, I market to those people saying, hey, do you want 2 acres of paradise in the sun to come and, you know, snowbird or think about retirement? You know what I mean? So, but we have students that work in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Illinois, Indiana.
And so I'm sorry. So are we the ones financing it to that potential buyer?
No, basically you're basically finding non-wanters, sellers that don't want their property anymore because they bought 2 pieces of land, one in Florida, one in Arizona, and they decided to build in Arizona, and now they don't care about their property in Florida, or their kids have inherited it, or they're out-of-state owners, or they got divorced, or whatever time and circumstance they're going through right now in their life. They need cash and they need out. And so you find these people, you put the property under contract, and then you market that property to buyers, and you get paid for, you know, for being in the middle. Pretty much you're buying and selling as a principal, so you don't need to have a license in order to do this. But basically you're not using any of your own money. It's like wholesaling a house, exactly like wholesaling a house, only
Right.
without the house. You
Right.
can do assignments even, like, you know what I mean? Where I purchased a property for, say, you know, $2,000, and I assign it to somebody else, you know, for 7,000, and it's a property that's worth 25. And it's yet another wholesaler, and they're okay with me making 5 because there's enough in it for them at the end. You know, there's still enough money for all of us to make money. So you can also use assignments, and you can assign the contract, you know, for 5, 10, depending on the price value, of course, of the property, and also not use your own money there. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
so everything that you would do in flipping a house, only without, I think, all the headaches of the house and the incredible amount of competition, because that's another thing. You know, we have, even within our coaching, our coaches now, you know, our team of coaches, we have what we call recovering house flippers, because they were sending 10,000 pieces of mail a week in order to find 3 deals, and we send maybe 750 to 1,000 pieces, you know, of mail a week, and get the same 3 deals with the same spread or better. You know, our typical spread is anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000. That's basically the rinse and repeat type of deal. You know, you can get higher than that and start at the 20, 30, 40,000. But we try to kind of build our business on something that is scalable, that we can rinse and repeat. And if those 50, you know, 30, 50, $100,000 spreads come our way, then great. But, you know, I'm happy with $20,000 spreads all day long. And
Well,
that's what Chad is learning, and she's gonna kick so much butt because if you think about it, I mean, multifamily, there's quite a bit of complexity. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. From actually underwriting to analyzing to your ability to communicate, you know, with brokers, to your negotiation skills, you know, with sellers, with your ability to actually present numbers in a way that, you know, a financial institution is going to give you money. It requires an incredible skill set on the fundraising side. I mean, it's complex. It requires, it's a lot of moving parts. And if you can do this, oh my God, you can flip land in your sleep.
The most interesting part of this land thing is the seller financing. I was, as an investor,
it's my favorite. Yeah,
financing. That's still creating passive cash flow. So I was thinking of that will be my focus in that one.
Yeah, the same for us. You know, in the beginning, Chad, we had no money. We had like $3,000 to our name for our first mailer. Because we didn't have any savings, because I had payments on everything in my house. So we could not afford to offer seller financing. We needed every single transaction to be a cash, you know, transaction in the beginning. And it wasn't until, like, you know, a year and a half into it that we're like, oh, okay, you know, my car payment is taken care of from land. You know, my insurance is taken care of from land. Our mortgage is being taken care of from, you know, from land right now. Maybe I can start having some of these parcels be sold with seller financing, so that I can start creating that cash flow, so that, you know, also my mortgage payment can be taken care of by the cash flow. Because that's one thing, you know, back in the day, we would go travel 4 or 5 weeks. And in those 4 or 5 weeks, you know, we wouldn't send any mailings, of course, because we couldn't field the calls. We weren't smart enough to think about hiring a call center to take our calls. We just didn't. And like, we didn't think about outsourcing the mailings. I actually folded, stuffed, licked, stamped every envelope in the beginning, because it didn't occur to me that I could outsource that. You know what I mean? I valued much more my money than my time back then. And therefore I did that all of myself. And so, yeah, but there was a point where we're like, okay, it starts making sense for us to start selling them with seller financing. And it was also not out of our own idea. Like, we're not brilliant people, ladies. Actually, somebody said, you know, I don't have the money to buy it cash, but would you be willing to take $1,000? And we had paid like $600 for that property. I have $1,000 down and I can make you, you know, and I could come up with $250 every month to pay you. And we're like, well, $1,000 means I have my $600 recouped and an additional $400 to go play. And now I have $250 of mailbox money, you know, for 5-10 years, and $250 doesn't seem like a lot. But then when you start building that portfolio of notes, and all of a sudden you have 300 notes with 300 people sending you $250 to $400, $500 every month, then it's when you're like, oh my God, let's only do that. Let's forget about selling for cash. Let's optimize for the highest possible value, you know what I mean? And just focus on the cash flow. But in the beginning, we didn't have the money to do that. Now I even have the luxury of, you know, doing land banking. Now we come across a piece of land and I know it's in the outskirts of Phoenix, you know, in the direction where Phoenix is growing like crazy. There are 5-acre lots in a subdivision called Whispering Ranch. I mean, I only have one daughter, but I could have 5 kids, and only from having, you know, those lots, and selling them in the future, I probably have, you know, the schooling all the way through grad school for 5 children. You know what I mean? So now I have the luxury and privilege of saying I can hold on to this piece of land and sit on it because it's, you know, I bought it for $5-10 grand, and it's going to be worth $100,000 at some point, maybe an acre.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
But in the beginning, you just have to do what you have to do. You know, when we liked a piece of property, and also we used to go and look at every piece of land, which you don't have to. You absolutely don't, but that's how long we've been doing this. There was no Google Earth. And so we would go to this piece of land and see it and stake it and take pictures, you know, to list it on our website. And we would, you know, with beautiful views. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if we could just, you know, keep this piece of land and not have to sell it. But we knew that we couldn't keep it. So our pleasure was to dance tango on that piece of land after we took pictures. And we're like, okay, at least we'll dance a little bit here, you know, and then market it and put it for sale and know that we had a good dance and that there were fantastic views, and that if I could have built a home there or a cabin, it would have been fantastic. But, you know, back then I couldn't. So
Michelle, thank you so very much. Look how quickly our time has gone. So when you're having fun,
and I can talk you to death about it. Thank you for allowing me into your space. Thank you for, you know, I honor you guys because it's hard work. Multifamily is hard work, and you're incredibly an advanced group of investors, and you're still humble enough and have the humility to continue learning. You know what I mean? I think the learners here inherit the earth. I love it. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your generosity and for your time. We value you, and thank you so much for just being so candid to this group and sharing your journey to success, being an immigrant. We appreciate all that. So thank you so very much, Michelle. And ladies, if you want to talk to Michelle, or if you want to contact Michelle,
send me a direct message. Just send me a direct message.
In our group. It's in our group, or direct message to Michelle. So, but we posted the bio of Michelle, so there's a contact place for Michelle there. And
but if you use that contact, you're gonna reach Barb, my assistant. So if you wanna, you know, contact me directly, just send me a direct message. I actually respond to all my direct messages.
Okay, yeah. So direct message as well. She's in this group. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, ladies. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
It was great meeting you all. Thank you.